One of the reasons I think I've always enjoyed process, I used to be a printmaker, and that's probably why I was drawn to printmaking, is because process is such a big part of it. And I think I enjoy the thinking that comes with process, because as you're working your way through something with your hands, it allows you time to think and maybe change your plans, and maybe you go into things and you don't have a specific plan when you start. And I like that, having that time to look at a lot of different options.
I think about printmaking a little bit like the way you would think about a dance partner. The process is part of the dance. It's part of two people collaborating together. In this case, the process works with the artist, and sometimes the process helps the artist. Sometimes the process steps on the artist's foot and gets in the artist's way. In the long run, though, the two have to work together before to have a successful image. I enjoy working with process. I enjoy working with materials such as acids and inks and presses, etching and carving into wood to create an image. It's a little bit different than drawing in that it's not as immediate or spontaneous, but oftentimes that lack of spontaneity adds a little bit of thoughtfulness to the process and makes you think a little bit longer about what you're doing, and helps you to generate ideas that might not originally be present.
After Google gave me all these pages and pages and pages of different images that it found of things that were similar visually to this, I started tracing them. I kind of took them just in the order that Google gave them to me. And then I made patterns for the tracings that I did of these. And I ended up with 4 separate pages with the linear tracings of each of these objects. And I labeled each one, so it's A, B, C, and D. And then based on the fact that there were 4 of these, I was trying to figure out, for some reason I wanted to layer all these. I think the idea was that because Google was kind of thinking of these as being equivalent in a way, visually, I wanted to merge all these different shapes. And so I was thinking about doing some overlapping and things like that. So I took the 4 different pages, the 4 different patterns, and I was kind of trying to figure out mathematically how many different combinations I could have if I used all 4 of these on a drawing, but in different combinations, and 2 on the front and 2 on the back of the paper. I'm using a paper that's kind of translucent. It's called Tableau, so that you can see through it, so that when I draw on the front and I draw on the back, you'll be able to see all those layers kind of coming through. So I figured out that using all these 4 in different combinations, I'd be able to come up with 24 different variations on this idea. So I made my schedule here, I guess you could call it, and I've gotten through 12, so I'm on number 13 right now. And what I was looking at is that I would have one pattern piece that I would draw on here first on the front side, then I would take another one and draw that over that one, also on the front side, and then I'd flip the paper over and I'd do one of the other patterns first, and then that 4th remaining pattern would go on last. And so again, I'd be using all 4 of the patterns every time.
Printmaking is primarily using a matrix or a form of some sort that can be reproduced either by inking or by transferring ink from one surface to another. Oftentimes, that inking is done with a brayer, as in relief prints for woodcuts, or for lithography where a roller is used. And sometimes with intaglio processes like etching, the ink is put on the surface and then wiped off of the top surface, leaving it in the crevices. And those crevices are what catch ink and what print and transfer over to the paper. One of the things I like about printmaking is the fact that I don't quite know what I'm going to end up with when I start. I have an idea in mind, and that idea is the impetus for the process to start. And once it begins, the process interferes with the idea sometimes and makes it clumsy or makes it not as visually reliable as it was intended to be. I like that part about printmaking, that the original idea gets filtered through a series of different processes and comes out differently.
Got drawers full of fragments of things that I never want to throw away. And I think that's important. You were asking me what one of my most important tools is, and I think it's all my leftover pieces from patterns I've done, things I've cut out, things I find. This was some kind of a print test thing. But I hate to throw anything away. And all of these things become important for when I put together other images. I've got something I'm kind of working on right now that I haven't decided exactly what I want to do with it yet, but I've got all these pieces that I'd like to put together somehow. And again, this is another fragment of a cutout one that I ended up not being able to use. So I've saved that. This is something that I had done a drawing of, and I've saved that piece. Again, just odds and ends that I've used in other drawings, and I'm trying to piece these together somehow. I'm also working with some of these paint chips. Kim got these for me from Home Depot, and they're the kind of things you would put on your garage floor. I think that's part of the process thing for me too, is working with materials I haven't worked with before, especially things that you wouldn't associate with art. So I, used some of these already in a couple different drawings. I've got them here, but right now I'm in the process of taking these paint chips one at a time and filling in the squares in these grids, this grid piece of paper. And then my plan is that I think somehow these will go together. I'm just looking at different combinations of things right now. But that's why these fragments are so important to me. I really like the idea of taking things that you might think you've already done with and bringing them back to life, because there's some real beautiful things that happen and stuff that are left over.
If I had a chance to work with other materials and to think about tools that are important to me, I like working with things that are tangible and three-dimensional rather than digital. So the analog, the carving, the etching, the wiping, the rolling are all an important part of the dance with the image to make the two come out together, to make the process in some way help to inform the image.